Hi, this is Chris with Walden Tiki, and I'm going to be showing you today how to create your own vibrating table. For those of you that have worked in castings, whether in concrete or in plaster, you'll know that bubbles are a big issue. They're hard to get rid of, and even if you do go to the expense of getting a vibrating table, they're pretty expensive and they're not even that durable. But to get a market one is going to cost you at least $400. So why not build your own? Here I'm using an exercise equipment called the vibrating pad. You can see these on Facebook Marketplace used, and they're really cheap, and there's a lot of them. Now I got mine for $50, but you can see them where you live and they're pretty cheap. Now this is a really heavy duty device. This is made to stand on and do squats and hold weights, so it can handle plaster and concrete. The device has a lot of settings, most of which you're not even going to need. In fact, all you really need is this simple vibrating setting. And it has a timer on it. Again, you don't really need it. So I'm going to test this out. I've got it in a simple vibration mode, and I'm going to put my water on there. I'm going to pick the correct mode, which is used for that simple vibrate. I'm going to hit start, and watch this. Immediately it starts to vibrate, and look at that. Agitating the water, and if that was plaster, that would be releasing those bubbles. The vibrating table is made to stand on, so ergonomically it's level. It's not really completely flat, and that's an issue for us for casting because we need a level surface. So as you can see here, if you're doing something small right in the center, no problem, but I'm going to be casting all over this thing and I need something flat. So when I check my level, and like I said, in the center I've got a scrap piece of wood here. It's perfect. But as we look to the left and right, you can see there's a huge gap on the actual vibrating machine itself that we need to get rid of. So how are we going to get rid of that hump? Well, the easiest thing to do is to create a ring around the outside of the vibrating table. And for that, I'm going to use this compression pad. It's hard rubber, and I'm going to basically cut a ring out of this foam rubber to put onto the vibrating table. Now I should mention that while I use this silicone rubber pad, you could use any sort of foam rubber, even from exercise pads. And basically I'm going to outline this around that pad, and I'm going to create another ring around that because I don't want it to overlap the overall vibrating table. So I'm going to create another inside line. On top of that, once I've cut it out, you can see that it fits pretty perfectly over top of the vibrating table. Except for you can't see the control panel, and you really need that. So I'm going to take the marker and I'm basically going to outline again where the controls are, because I need to create that ring and I want it to start and stop around that control panel. With that in place, I'm going to then create another ring on the inside. Once I understand where everything kind of needs to go and I don't want to overlap everything, I'm going to cut out an inside ring that's about 1.5 inches wide, and it will sit right over top of the vibrating table, and that will give the platform for the surface. So I've created the ring, I've cut it out, and as you can see, it's a perfect fit. And that's going to allow me to create a flat surface that is perfectly level. So I'll check that with my scrap piece of wood. I'll put my level on top of it, and as you can see, again, right across, now I have a completely flat surface. So now I need to create a flat surface, and for that I'm using a 3/4 inch plywood with a nice finished side. It's a scrap piece, maybe costs $10 tops, and it's really heavy, so it's not going to warp, which is important. Because when you're putting lots of weight on this, you do not want a piece of flimsy plywood that's going to warp and lose your level. Of course, because I'm a stickler for testing, I want to actually see if that wood will still work and if it's going to continue to vibrate enough. So I'm going to test it with the water, and it works perfectly. As with the foam, I want to make sure I can actually see the controls, right? I want that to actually come through the board. So I'm going to take my tape measure. I'm going to find the halfway point. 28 inches, 14 is what I'm looking for. and I'll also figure out what is the width of the control panel. And I got 5, so I'm going to take my tape measure and I'm going to try to center on 2.5 inches, half of 5, and that will give me the outside of where I need to cut on this piece of plywood, so I can cut that and sand it and get it all prepped for putting on. Next, we want to take our ring, and we need to attach this ring onto the vibration machine. We're going to take some, this is two-sided tape. You can see here, it's double-sided or two-sided tape, also called carpet tape sometimes as well. This stuff is pretty easy to use. It could be a little bit tricky. I suggest testing it out on something first before you use it, because it is sticky as hell and it will stick really well to any surface. So I'm going to speed this up so you can see. We'll get it all added on to the rubber ring. With that in place, although I started it, this is the tricky part, sometimes getting that tape started to peel it off. But once you get it all peeled off and you're getting ready to put it onto the surface, make sure your surface is clean. Make sure you don't have any dirt on there, and take your time adding this to the surface, because it's really sticky. It is hard to take off. It is almost impossible to take off in one piece. So take your time, be patient with it. Get it centered as much as you can and push it down onto the surface of the machine, and you'll see it's pretty solid once you do that. It's not going to wiggle, it's not going to move on you. Once you've attached the ring, you're going to do the same thing on the top side, because we're going to use the two-sided tape again to attach the work surface to the top of the ring that we just created. Now, I didn't really show you this, but I've taken that board that we measured out, I've cut out the inside, I've sanded it, I've put a sealant on top of it, because we're using concrete and plaster. I don't want it to soak with water, and we're putting that on top of that two-sided tape that we've taken off, and we're pushing it on there. It is really solid, and of course you have to give it that good pat, and we are pretty darn happy with that. We all know no project is complete until we test it. So I'm using one of my silicone casts. I'm putting on a little bit of Windex and water, which helps break the surface tension. I'm going to take my plaster, which is all ready to go. I've set that up, and I'm going to pour that in slowly over my cast. I don't have the table on yet. This is something I'm going to play with a little bit for now on my test, just to make sure everything's working. I just kept it off. You can see here there's bubbles. You can literally see the bubbles going in. Those damn bubbles that always mess up your castings. So I'm pouring that in, getting it to the level I want. I'm going to look at all those bubbles. I'm going to turn on the vibrating machine, my brand new vibrating machine, start it up, and boom, look at that. It works perfectly. And look at those bubbles. The bubbles are literally rising up and popping. That is exactly what we're looking for in a vibrating machine. Look at how simple that was. This whole project only took about 2.5 hours to do, and the total cost on this, once I take into account the cost of the materials, which was $50 that I got for the vibrating machine, and about another $35 in tape and the pad, you're looking at a vibrating table that works perfect for casting plaster and concrete. Look at that, for under $100. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was useful to you. Let me know in the comments how your project turns out, and thanks for watching.